I was just telling the Rebbetzin here, the Oligarary, that there's an expression they say that it's always worse speaking to someone that knows a little about something than someone who knows nothing about something. In other words, it's easier to speak with a clean slate when you have no conceived notions about any given topic. And actually that's my primary work. I speak more to secular audiences, and I don't even know what the word Moshiach means. And they don't have any controversy around it, and they don't have any knowledge. There's complete ignorance. So in a sense, whatever they hear the first time, that's what they're going to listen to. In your case, you're already scholars who have been well versed and well, educated, at least that's what I assume the school and the teachers feel, in a topic so fundamental like Mashiach. So on one hand, it's easier because you know the language and you're familiar with ideas, but on the other hand, it's harder because you may already have preconceived notions and concepts for right and for wrong about something. In most cases, it's wrong, or at least distorted and confusing. So that's what makes it harder to challenge. Let me just shut the door here for a moment. Okay. So how do you deal with that? Well, you begin with an introduction like I just began, by stating this most important issue. And in communication, that's vital, because if you don't have that in place, you can say the best things, but if people already have their own attitudes, very hard to change preconceived attitudes. So with that being said, I will try to address this from a very maybe fresh new way that you haven't heard before. And like it is, the Rebbe writes in many letters, that if you really want to communicate something effectively, you have to be able to speak to someone that you don't know and doesn't know your language. So the only way you can communicate to someone is using Hebrew words or Yiddish words or Torah words. Then you don't really know whether you understand it or not, because maybe you're just relying on words that you yourself may not even know what they mean. And you have to translate it into a language that a person doesn't know the words you grew up with. You're forced to have to actually explain it. So that's the approach I'm going to take, that I think can enrich all of us in understanding the olive base. Talking about Moshiach and Geulah, we usually begin the discussion in the middle of the book without going through the first most important introduction, which is number one. What does it mean? What is Moshiach and Geulah? When I was a child in yeshiva, they taught us that Mashiach comes, there's going to be ice cream growing on trees. That's what we learned in the 4th grade. And for most of my childhood life and school life, I always thought that's what it was. And then I got a little older, and I realized a little more bigger picture, but that's still the image in my mind. I actually went to my teacher. I didn't sue him, but I actually did challenge him. I said, that's an image good for 5-year-olds, whatever, what age we were, 8-year-olds. What do? You get a little older, you need a little more sophisticated, a more realistic picture. And you don't usually know. If I were to ask you this basic challenge question, Mashiach were to come right now, what would happen to the street outside here on Crown Street, Kingston Avenue? Would the pizza shop disappear? Would the sushi places no longer exist? What would happen with the birds, with the sky? What would happen tomorrow morning? Can anyone give me a very cohesive and normal answer to that question? I'm not asking because it would take too much time to go through this entire room. And without slogans. Just explain it to a simple person who doesn't know Hebrew and doesn't know concepts. Simple. What will it be? Will the street exist or won't exist? Will people go to work? Will the subway stop working? Will we all be whisked to Eretz Yisrael overnight? Etc., etc. Now, the question is, have you ever even given it any thought? And if you haven't, so tell me, what do you know about Moshiach and Geulah if you can't even describe what it looks like? So yes, I understand. You'll say the Beis Hamikdash will be built and all the Jews will go to Israel. That's what it says in the Psukim. And the Rambam cite that. But that didn't answer my question. That answers some things you know. What about basic life? Will there even be school? Many people look forward to Mashiach because there'll be no more school. You know, is that true or not true? The reason I'm bringing this question up is because this shows, and you could think about it yourself. It's not a quiz. I'm not testing you in your knowledge. I'm just asking this question that if you don't ask that question, you're definitely not going to come to an answer. And if you don't have an answer for this, I don't see how you can explain it even to yourself or to any normal person on earth who's going to ask you this very obvious question. So much focus is on what is the Rebbe Mashiach, without even knowing what is the street going to look like, what is my life going to look like, what is my bedroom going to look like. So, the debates have been raging. I'm a little older than you, so I can tell you long before you were born. Whatever you hear the debates now were debates then. Now 24 years almost from Gimel Tammuz, and 26 years from when the Rebbe last spoke to us, Begashmis, and 27 years from when the Rebbe spoke the famous words that the world is ready. I did everything I can do what you can. I'm sure you know some of these sikhs. I'm not going to be quoting here many sikhs because you know many of them. I will use references to some of them, but I want to use them all in context of answering the most basic olive-based questions. That if you have that in place, everything else follows. If you don't have that in place, it'll just be one confusing mess. And now some of the questions on the paper, obviously we put together over the years, based on questions that came from your predecessors, 12th graders in earlier generations, earlier years, and includes most of the questions. But I'm going to address it, not going by question. I find it easier to just address certain principles, and many of the questions automatically will be answered. But then, if there's time, I will go through some basic ones. So what I'm going to address now are some of these questions, but instead of doing it piece by piece, you see the first one is what is Moshiach and Geulah according to the Torah? Overview. How important to Judaism? So I'm going to address the first ones first. Because without that, the others will not be understood. Starting with the question I just asked, what is it going to look like? I think it has to go back a step before that, and that question is, what's wrong with life as it is right now? That we even need Moshiach and Geulah. It's one thing, 70 years ago, most Jews lived either in Europe under the Nazis, or under the Soviets, who weren't much better. And basically throughout our history, till the last 60, 70 years, we've been under persecution and genocides and expulsions and all kinds of inquisitions, literally almost unending throughout the last few thousand years. So then, when you lived then, it was understandable. Mashiach would redeem us, the Jewish people, from all these persecutions. Whether it was Pari and Mitzrayim, or it was Persia, or Bavel, or the Romans, or later the Spanish and the Inquisitions, and the Crusaders, and the later pogroms, and the Nazis, as I mentioned. So that makes very sense, living in such Chassidus. So clearly, Moshiach Geulah means redemption from that, where all this ends, and we have peace. But one could argue we have peace right now. We no longer live under those conditions. You can learn and practice Yiddishkeit as much as you like. No one's coming to arrest us. No one's informing on us. There's nothing illegal about it. I know we take it for granted, but that's how it was 60, 70, 80 years ago. You go back a few hundred years, it was everywhere that way. So we grew up in basically freedom, all of us here, born in freedom, including myself. We have no Chassidus of this nature. Doesn't mean we don't have challenges, but as I said, you can legitimately be as Jewish as you like, publicly as you like, without anyone persecuting you, without any type of being governmental oppression, and so on. So then the question is, what does one need Mashiach? There's so many kosher outlets. Today, being Jewish is very easy. Everything is available. You don't have to travel thousands of miles or hundreds of miles to find something of Yiddishkeit, especially now with Chabad houses everywhere. So one could ask the question, maybe it's not as important as it once was. Now, I know that's not, of course, not the answer. So we have to understand why did the Eibishter put it into the system, say that one of the Yud Gimel Ikrim, in the words of the Rambam, one of the 13 principles of faith is that Mashiach will come and redeem not just the Jewish people, but the entire world. What does that mean? And redeem from what? Someone said to you, redeem from what? My life is happy, I'm healthy, thank God, make no living, have a good family. What are you redeeming me from? I know, again, slogans, golas, some people say you don't see all the kuzba goli. These are good words, but what does it mean in practical terms if your life is working? Yeah, for someone who's desperate and in a difficult situation, even today, you could say, of course they're waiting for the gula because they don't want any more tzaddik. And yet we find it's one of the principles of Jewish faith, to the point, to explain what a principle is that it's equated with believing in Hashem and believing in Torah. So for example, keeping Shabbos is not one of the 13 principles. Yud Gimel Iker. Why? Because Shabbos is important and vital, but it's not a foundation that if you don't keep Shabbos, God forbid, the whole Judaism falls apart. That's what an Iker is. It's a foundation. Shabbos is a part of Yiddishkeit and a critical part. However, if someone does not believe in God, God forbid, I know that doesn't sound so interesting, God forbid, or someone does not believe the Torah, then the whole Torah falls apart. Because based on what? The whole Torah is based on that Hashem gave us these laws to follow. That's why in Shavuos we'll be celebrating Matan Torah. And Mashiach is not included as a detail, it's included in one of these foundations. In other words, as the Rambam writes, if you don't believe in Mashiach, the whole Yiddishkeit falls apart. Why can't you have someone that does all the Torah mitzvahs, the Hiddur, and believes in everything except one thing, doesn't believe Mashiach? Come on, Islam. Why does the whole Judaism fall apart? So all these questions are all part of the same question, and understanding what it is before we answer why it's so vital and how the world will look. So the answer is to use a very simple example that everybody can understand. Think of, let's say, you're on a train and it's traveling towards somewhere, and there's someone driving the train, the conductor or the engineer, and there's a whole plan. You leave this place and you're going somewhere. And let's say somebody suddenly announces on the train, you know what? There is no destination. And you say, why did I get on the train in the first place? Where are we going? There's no destination. Or people forgot what the destination is. You'd say the whole purpose of the journey is lost. Where are we ending up? That's the exact example that I want to apply here. Hashem created the world for a purpose and design. It's not accident, and it's not random. There's a purpose. And there's a purpose that every one of you knows. The purpose is what? To make a dira b'tachtenim. That souls should come down to this world through their Torah mitzvahs and through their dedication, transform the world and make it a home, a comfortable home for Hashem, for what God wants us to be. What's the difference between a comfortable home and an uncomfortable place? When people are murdering each other, and people are stealing from each other, and people are unethical and unjust, and are not following the laws of Torah and mitzvahs, then it's not a home for Hashem. It's not a place Hashem wants to be, because it's not conducive for anything that's healthy. And frankly, even for human beings, it's not a healthy home. A dira b'tachtenim in simple English means this is a place that's aligned, like you learn Basi Lagani. What does it say, Gani? A garden. A garden is a beautiful place where you want to walk. Once there's a chet, when there's a sin, that's what we learned right at the beginning of the Maimer Basi Lagani. If you've learned the Maimer from the Rivkah Rebbe and then from the Rebbe every year. Now once there was the chet etzadas, what happened? Hashem's presence was concealed. Or the words there was removed to a higher heaven, to the Kiyah Hashishi. What does that mean? It means that God can't be present when we are defying Him or we're pushing Him away. Dira b'tachtenim means the exact opposite. That your home and your life and the streets and everything around this world is aligned with what the engineer, we call the cosmic engineer, the Eibishter, what he created it for. He created this machine called life, and these little machines, each one of us with our lives, for a purpose, and it's going toward a destination. So for someone to say, I don't believe in God, obviously it undermines the whole foundation of this. If someone says, I don't accept the Torah, Chas v'shalom, it also undermines the whole thing, because the Torah is the blueprint and the guidebook, if you want to call it the operator's manual, of how we use this machine and how we drive this train. A little trauma here on this side, so we're giving it a little time to recognize. There are no chairs in this room?
Give the girl okay?
No chairs in the entire school?
This is what we have. We make do with what we have. We work with each other.
So this is an example of what direct painting is not, okay? A mild example. So to go back where I was up to, so basically, Mashiach, if you just take it, replace the word Moshiach and Geulah with the word destination and objective and goal, and you have a very practical translation that's probably different than anything you thought of. Because we get so caught up in the person and the immediate events, we forget the big picture. The big picture is that Mashiach is a fundamental principle, because just as you need Hashem, who drives the whole process and created the whole thing in the first place, and you need a plan and design, and you need the plan and design communicated to us in a mandate called the Torah, the blueprint, you also need, what is the destination? Where are we headed? What will be the end of the story? And if you say there is no end, God forbid, or we don't know what the end is, that's the equivalent of being on a train going nowhere. So basically, Moshiach Geulah, therefore, is equated exactly with that. If you don't believe in that, it's as if you don't believe in God. It's as if you don't believe that God created the world for a purpose. Because it's like saying, okay, God maybe created the world for a purpose, but who said the purpose will be realized? That would be basically saying, can we get it calm there, or you could always step out. It would be the equivalent of saying that God created the world for a purpose, but the purpose will never be realized. So either God was wrong, or, I don't want to say the word insane, or something's wrong here. That's why Mashiach is not some footnote and some sidebar. It's actually critical, because it is the realization of the purpose. And lahavdil, if you were to use business as an example, and you say someone built a business, and they have a mission statement, have a business plan, and they will say, here are the goals of this business. The goals of this Starbucks is to sell a lot of coffee. And the same thing with every other company. Google is to organize all the information of the world and make it accessible. If you ever heard of a thing called Google. Everything has a purpose and everything has a goal. So lahavdil, in the words of Yiddishkeit, Hashem is the creator, the Torah is the blueprint and the business plan, and the goal and objective is Mashiach. And they're all three intertwined, and all are necessary. So Mashiach, in simple terms, is the realization, the fulfillment of the purpose of existence. And that's why it's so critical. So now going back to the question, what will it look like? The simple answer is this. It'll look like exactly what God wanted it to look like. And then look at the world as it is, and say, is this a world the way Hashem wanted it to be? The Rebbe has Nesicha in Tov Shin Aleph. was actually a few weeks before the Rebbe came to America. There's a shur sikh. And he says, gave an example. He says, in a while, there's going to be a special guest coming to your house. And that guest is going to stay in your house. And it's your responsibility to make the guest comfortable. So how would you prepare your house for that special guest? So obviously you clean it up, not just physically, but spiritually in every possible way, because the guest is staying by you. And the Frierdiker Rebbe concluded and said that guest is Moshiach. So if this person Moshiach, you want to replace, use the word Rebbe, use the word Rebbe, came to stay in your house this Shabbos, what would your house look like? Would it be exactly what it looked like last Shabbos? And how would be your behavior and your room and all the other parts of your home? So that's a simple way of looking at it. But basically saying, is my life aligned and directed by the way, the blueprint I mentioned, and the goals that Hashem gave us to fulfill in our lives? And the answer for most of us is no. Maybe parts of it. But we're busy with a lot of distractions. We're busy with our own vanity and our own self-interest and our own pleasures and all the things, even if it's not unkosher, it's still your own agenda. What Torah and Chassidus teaches us is how to align your life to live up to what the operator's manual expects of you and why you were sent to this world. So in your case, your students in school, if you're a good student, you're studying and you're fulfilling the mission of this stage of your life, which is to get the best possible Jewish education that will inspire you and empower you in the near future to marry the right person and to build a home and a life that's according to the kavanah and intentions of Torah, Chassidus, the Rebbe, and whatever form shlichus it takes on, then you are doing your best to align it. So yes, you could say that you are working toward living a Moshiach type of life. Obviously, there are things that are not in our control. We cannot control when the Beis Hamikdash HaShlishi will be built on the Temple Mount, because that's up to God. Only God can decide. We also are not in control of Chis HaMesim and resurrection. And we're not in control of many things that are not up to us. But there are thousands of things that are completely in our control. And that's all that's expected of us. The Rebbe, when he said the words, I did everything, do whatever you can, he didn't say, do things that you're not capable of. He would never say such a thing. It would be cruel, the Rebbe says in many sikhs, to ask someone to do something they're not capable of. That means it's something in our capacity. It's not a miracle. It doesn't require supernatural powers. It requires focus, paying attention, understanding what's the priority of your life. And if you hear that sikha again, 27 years ago, the Rebbe says the words, and the biggest golus is the golus pnimi. Meaning, the golus chitzeni, as I said, we live in much better times than our grandparents did. But the golus pnimi is your own apathy and indifference and distractions. Everybody's busy with their things. Apathy doesn't mean that you're against something. It means you're indifferent. You're neutral. And that means you're not passionate about it. So how do you spark in people, in ourselves, and yourselves, and all of us, a passion for Moshiach and Geulah as the Rebbe wanted? So the first step is understanding what you have to be passionate about. It's very hard to be passionate about something you don't know what it is. So really, in simple terms, it's the fulfillment of the plan and the dream of Hashem, of course, but also of every human being and every tzaddik and tzidkonis from Adam HaRishon, Adam and Chava, all the way to our times. That's what they wanted. That everything they did would ultimately come to fruition in the world of Geulah. That's why it says in many Maimonides Chazal that the whole world was created for Moshiach and Geulah. It's not just some side thing, as I said, it's the fulfillment of every piece. And here's the next point. Again, I'm not going through the questions, but I'm answering some of the questions as I speak. Many people misunderstand and think Geulah and Mashiach is an event that's going to happen. Yes, it is an event. And the Rambam gives the conditions of that event. What Mashiach, Cheskas Mashiach, and what Mashiach Vadai. Cheskas Mashiach, someone from the house of David will rise and will be dedicated to Torah mitzvahs and will influence and inspire others that way. Will fight a battle. that makes him presumed to be Mashiach. And what's Mashiach? Vadai, for sure, the Rambam continues, he'll win this battle. He'll rebuild the Beis Hamikdash from Kemei, Zemirish Hashlishi, and Rikabitz, and he will gather all the exiles, meaning all Jews, back there. That's the technical events. And then he continues on in the next page, more detail. No war, no famine, no unhealthy jealousies, and competition. There'll be a world filled with divine knowledge as the waters cover the sea, using the Yeshaya, the Navi, that we said on Achon Shel Pesach and Haftarah. Not all the people of the world, not just Jews, their main preoccupation, their Asik, their preoccupation will be to know Hashem. That's what the Rambam says. I'm going to elaborate on that in a moment. So that's the technical picture. But the key thing to remember, and this is the Alter Rebbe says in Perek Lamed Vav, and Lamed Zayin and Tanya, because basically if you really want to know the principles I'm sharing here, are based on Lamed Vav and Lamed Zayin and Tanya, and on the Rambam's last two prokim in Hilchos Malach. And the Alter Rebbe says these words in the beginning of Perek Lamed Zayin. V'hine, the Tachlis, Riyas Elam, which is Gili Elokus, the Elam Hazeh Gashmi, the purpose of the creation of all, which is the Gili Elokus that he speaks about in chapter 36, the Dira B'Tachtenim. How will that come about? This is a big question, because there are actually two different opinions, and the Alter Rebbe paskins according to one of them. One opinion could be, you know what, it's going to come about when Hashem wants it, and we have no role to play. We have to do our mitzvahs, and when Hashem decides, that's when it comes. Says the Alter Rebbe, no. Through our efforts, that's how it will come. In other words, in simple English, it means that Moshiach and Geulah is not just an event. It's an event that comes after a long process. Simple English, that every mitzvah, every sacrifice, every good deed, every price paid by every Jew from the beginning of history till this day, and I would even say non-Jew that behaved in an ethical way, every good deed, think of it like a building block, a little piece of Mashiach, and Elokus was brought into this world. But you need a building, you need more than one building block. So as they accumulated over history, they built the structure and the energy of a Mashiach energy that would enter existence, and when the moment would come that it would erupt, think of accumulating a lot of energy, and then like a volcano that erupts. That's the end of the process. That's the events that we call the beginnings of Geulah, Moshiach and Geulah. So it's not an event out of nowhere. Every part of history has been leading toward it. So when the Eden came out of Mitzrayim and they were Makabel the Teda, and they did mitzvahs, and when people paid prices wherever they were throughout history, it was all building blocks, little pieces of a big jigsaw puzzle, that when it concludes, and it all accumulates, brings what we call the world of Geulah. And that's why we actually can see, as the Rebbe puts it in these words, that the world is ready, he says, the Rebbe. And the world is ready for the Geulah. And if you open your eyes and connect the dots, you can see it in the world, which is what I'm going to talk about right now. But before I speak details, the point I'm making here is that the efforts that people made in Mesiras Nefesh and the dedication and commitments actually changed the world. We don't have the world today as it was once. So everything I spoke about before about freedoms, this is not an accident that we live in a free world. It's not an accident that we Jews today, for the first time in history, can literally be as frum and as Chassidus and as committed as you wish. No one will stop you. That is a direct result of all the Torah mitzvahs that refined the world and made it possible for us to have such gifts. So if you look on the world and you know a little history, and I'm going to elaborate on this because it requires really much more discussion, but just briefly, you'll see a pattern that yes, the world has moved from one type of world to a very different type of world today. In every area of life. Not just on a religious level. The Iyar says, did I put to sleep? Okay. Huh?
There's the wind for a crack.
It's fine, it's good.
That's okay. That's a good
When someone's asleep, you know the neshama for sure is listening. When they're awake, you can never know. That's how I feel. So, in every area of life, I'll demonstrate this in 3 or 4 categories. So the Zohar says, a famous Zohar that you may have heard about and learned, the Zohar says that the year Hei Alofim Tafresh, which is literally the year 5600, exactly 178 years ago. The Zohar says there'll be a paradigm shift, an explosion of knowledge, both of higher knowledge and lower knowledge. Have you learned this? Yeah. The year Tafresh corresponds to the secular year in the Gregorian calendar 1840. And there'll be an explosion of higher knowledge and lower knowledge, and the commentaries explain as the Rebbe cites. That means Torah knowledge, especially Pnimis HaTorah, Chassidus, and lower knowledge, scientific knowledge. 1840 is the year that every historian and every academic will tell you that marks the beginning, official beginning of the Industrial Revolution. And everybody wonders, till this day, a very strange phenomenon. Usually, scientists and innovators, as they think about ideas, so ideas come to them and they accumulate in a very orderly way. So you would think that inventions and technologies that would develop, every 100 years. I know a few more technologies, a few more, but that's not what happened. In the year 1840 till the year around 1920, and it only accelerates afterwards, which I'll get to in a moment, there was an explosion of inventions that far surpassed hundreds and hundreds of years before that. And no one understands why. Because again, it would make sense. Let's say the steam engine should be invented in, let's say, the 1600s. Electricity in the 1700s. No, it didn't happen that way. One period in time, hundreds of new concepts and new inventions that changed the world. That's why it's called the Industrial Revolution. It industrialized the world and automated things. Just to give you one statistic, that before the Industrial Revolution, 95% of energy generated in the world was generated by human beings. And 100 years later, 1955, 95% of energy generated in the world is generated by machines. You see how different that is? Today you can press a button, Amazon Prime, and get something delivered within an hour. But even 100 years ago, the revolution was on. It's only accelerated since. And this is not some type of matter of faith or religion, this is facts on the ground. The Zohar's explanation is because the world has become refined. How has it become refined? By people's good deeds, and by mitzvahs, and by Mesiras Nefesh, and all the efforts. They changed the world, because we firmly believe that when a person does a mitzvah, as Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, Yichud Nitzeh Nitzchi Le'elam Vod. That means that forever. Which answers, of course, another obvious question that people say, why do I have to do good deeds? Why do I have to do mitzvahs? If everyone dies at the end anyway. That's a very basic question people ask. So some people answer, well, it's the right thing to do, it's what Hashem says, the Torah says. The real answer is, beyond all that, is because nothing dies. The good deeds we do not die. God forbid to say such a thing. That would mean that all the prices that Avram and Sarah and everyone paid, and all the prices that Jews were Mesiras Nefesh, died with them. Chas v'sholom. They physically may not be here, but Mazari b'chaim, Afu b'chaim, the children are here, and the grandchildren are here, and the good deeds they did changed the world. And that is why technology exploded, because the world is now more refined, and the refined world is conducive to technology. What do you think technology is? You think there was no subatomic particles and electricity in Gan Eden? It was there, but it was hidden. No one knew it. When you refine the Gashmizdika world, in the scientific language, matter becomes more conducive for energy. The Jew Einstein said, E equals mc squared. The matter of the world is conducive to energy. This is basically the words from the Medrash that says that Matan Teda, connected material world with the spiritual world. That we can actually spiritualize this world, and that's exactly what happened. So in the world of technology, in the world of medicine, in the world of politics, in the world of religious freedom, it's a new world. Completely not the world that it was a few hundred years ago. And we believe it's all due as a result to the actions that Eden and good people did through time. So where do we now stand now? We stand now, says the Rebbe, at the end of this process. It's actually, if you think about it, it makes total sense. There has to be an end to the process. And how much Mesiras Nefesh, how many mitzvahs are made? The millions and billions of good deeds have been done. People gave their lives for their Yiddishkeit. They died on Kiddush Hashem. 6 million Jews just 70 years, 80 years ago. So the Rebbe said we're at the end of the process. The world has become refined. The stage is set. But there's one thing missing. We have to do something. We have to do something to tip the scale, so to speak. To do the last step, which is our awareness of it. Because the Geulah could be right upon us, and we could all be asleep. No? The Geulah came and you were asleep. What would happen? The Geulah is here, you're asleep. Now, sleep doesn't always mean lying in bed, as we have witnesses here. Asleep could be that, as everyone said to somebody, that some people sleep by my fabrengens with their eyes closed, and most people sleep with their eyes open. So the Rebbe said, F in the Egen. What does it mean, F in the Egen? I remember once a bocher asking me, F in the Egen? Our eyes are open. What do you think? The Rebbe talks about physical eyes. He doesn't know that your eyes are open. Obviously, he doesn't talk about physical eyes. It means open your eyes and see, like they say, smell the roses and see really what's going on. When you see the developments in the world. And the Rebbe spoke about the fall of the Soviet Union and spoke about technology and spoke about everything I just mentioned. That's not just an accident. Open your eyes and realize that the world has changed and it's a stage is set. Today, for example, go back to the Rambam's words. Mola Odes Deus Hashem Kamayim Liyamachas. What does it literally mean? Fill the entire world with divine knowledge as the waters cover the sea. Now, when Yeshaya said that, and you were living then, tell me, how exactly would you explain that pasuk? How exactly is knowledge going to fill the entire world? The only way you could explain it is with a miracle. Even Matan Torah didn't fill the entire world, even though the whole world felt it, but not everybody was transformed. Today, you don't even need a miracle. It's called the press of a button with technology. You can have one piece of knowledge that can be transmitted literally instantaneously to 7 billion people on this planet, and you don't have to even pay a penny to do it. So the possibility is all there. Who would ever imagine that? It's not an accident. The Rebbe says in a number of sikhs, the reason it's there is because we refined the world and made it ready. When Yeshaya said it, it was a nevuah. It was a futuristic vision, which no one probably at the time could have figured out how it's going to happen. Today you don't even need to be a maimin, a person of faith to see. It's happening all the time. Technology is exactly that. You can sit right here, access any information. You can contact Australia, or you can contact the moon for that matter, or some spaceship that's thousands of millions, billions of miles away, instantaneously. It may take a little time for the travel, but you can see images beamed from one corner of the world to the other. This whole element of what's called time and space that separates us is gone. And this is just the dawn of technology. This is where the radio and television was in 1920. Even though we think it's so revolutionary, it's just the beginning. So who put this in place? This is Hashem's way of setting the stage and laying out the pipelines that we can use them to convey a message of Hashem to the world. So the focus is Molar Steis Hashem. That we live in a world of knowledge and information revolution. Everyone says that. Now the problem is, what's the information? Most of it is nonsense. A lot of it is actually unhealthy and damaging, but it does fill the world. So the pipes are there, and we do not have to pay for them. They're laid out. The stage is set. The question is, what are we going to do? That's the only question. And that's what the Rebbe said. You do not have to change the world. The world has been changed for you. What you have to do is take it seriously and realize that your neshama came down to this world in this kufa, in this period, not 100 years ago, and not 50 years ago, but now, because you can make the choice to be a shliach of the Rebbe, who's a shliach of the Eibishter, to fulfill the last step of this marathon. So you ever see a marathon, let's say a relay race? And every generation passes the baton to the next generation. The baton has been passed on to us. The Rebbe said, as explicit as it gets, tooth out to can. We may not like what he said, we may not, we'd rather him do it, the Rebbe, but that's what he said. He didn't say it once, he said it many times. And therefore the question is only something, what are we going to do? So if you can understand what Geulah is like, and the more you learn about it, the more you understand the world that it's like, then the question is your life, how close is your model to the prime model of what the destination is? It's just like someone goes for a physical exam, the doctor tells you you need more vitamins because you're weak in this area. Shows you an x-ray, let's say, and say that if you take these vitamins, here's what the x-ray of healthy bones looks like, or healthy lungs, or healthy circulation, and here's what your, God forbid, looks like. It's not as healthy as it could be. So what do? You correct things, you strengthen, you improve your hygiene, your diet, your behavior, to align itself to what a healthier person is like. So it's exactly how we have to look at Moshiach and Geulah. Do you mind closing the door? Air conditioner's not, doesn't work.
Okay, yeah.
What about just opening the window?
I don't think you could.
Okay, the good news is this will have to limit my talk because we don't all die from heat here. What time are we here?
We have another 5 minutes.
Okay. I'm winding down. So the question then is the same thing. The Rebbe once told somebody in Chassidus, someone asked the Rebbe, who's a doctor, why the Rebbe is so passionate and so adamant about Moshiach and Geulah. So the Rebbe said to him, using an example from a doctor, he said to him, if you saw, God forbid, somebody that came to you who was very unhealthy, very ill, would you just say, oh, you know what? Not so bad, we'll worry about it tomorrow? You send them to emergency room and figure out right away how to heal that person, not let them die. So the Rebbe said, Golus is an illness, it's a machla. What is the machla? It's a world that's not aligned with the purpose for which it was created. And that can break the machine and damages the machine. So Geulah is not just a nice icing on the cake. Geulah is actually the healthiest we could be. The way we live our lives, most aligned and most directed by, as I said, the operator's manual, to be the healthiest people we can be. So the more you learn about Geulah, which is what the Rebbe says to learn about it, why? Because then you know what you're learning, what the product is, so then you know what you can do to get there. And there are things you can do privately yourself, your own personal life, and the things, of course, we're also responsible is influencing and inspiring others. But it's very hard to talk to someone about Geulah if you don't yourself don't know what it is. That's why I began my question, what the world will look like. So the Rebbe says in the Sikha that we just, Zachri Kadeshim, Tafshin and Aleph, 27 years ago, just last week. So the Rebbe said he would get letters from people who say they're afraid of the Geulah comes. Why? They built up their equity in this world. They have holdings, investments, businesses. They have possessions. The Mashiach will come. Everything they built up in their lives, it will be gone. The Rebbe said with a smile, don't be afraid. Geulah is not going to take anything away from anyone. It's only going to add. And he said the famous words that Geulah is Geulah with an aleph. Geulah with an aleph means Geulah is Golus. Everything will remain. Geulah has everything from Geulah, but it has one additional element, the aleph. The aleph inside Geulah. The aleph from Alufish Shalelam, from Agdus, from Hashem Echad, aleph. So what does that mean? I'll give you two examples. And then, a few more extra minutes, I'll be happy to take some questions. So two examples. One is an example from a letter that Rebbe wrote. Another example, something that happened that I learned from that letter that I applied in a real practical way. So the letter is a letter to someone who owns a dry cleaners. Pretty mundane business, right? And yet the Rebbe says, as the Rebbe does in so many other letters and sikhs, that everything in life is divine providence, Rivkah pratis, and the fact that you work in the dry cleaners means there must be a lesson in Avodas Hashem in serving God from a cleaners. Now, what could we have a lesson from cleaners? the Rebbe says the following. He says, what is the idea of cleaning? Dry cleaning or regular dry cleaning? Is you buy a garment, a fresh garment, you wear it once, twice, 3 times. At some point, it gets soiled, it gets wrinkled, it gets dirty, and it becomes something you can't wear anymore. You think you have to throw it out and buy a new garment. No. The innovation of dry cleaning did this. That you take the garment and you put it into water, and not just cold water, hot water. You mix it with chemicals, so it gets rid of the stains. And then you take it out and dry it, and then you put it under a heavy press, and fresh like a new garment. And you can do this many times in the life of this garment, and wear it like it's new. The Rebbe says, what's the lesson from this? Neshama shenasata bi tehedihi. Every morning we say, the neshama you've given me, you say to Hashem, is pure, like a fresh garment. But then life takes over. Life's experiences, disappointments, challenges, our own mistakes, intentional, not intentional. And it makes the garment, the neshama, gets dirty. It gets wrinkled, it gets soiled. So you could think, okay, it's a one-way street. Once it was pure, no longer. No, the Torah says, here's what you do, and you say it every morning, the Neshama Shenesat B'Teiri. Why? Because you can do something. You immerse your soiled Neshama into water, Ein Mayim El Torah. And not just cold water, warm water, which is a life of Chayes. Cold water is Kalkeit, indifference. Varmkeit, warmth. And then you mix it with chemicals. Every mitzvah is another chemical, the Rebbe writes. Every chemical counteracts, every mitzvah counteracts one of the mistakes we may have made. And then finally you take it out and put it under a very heavy press. Kabbalas El. What's Kabbalas El? It literally means to accept the yoke of heaven. In other words, feel the pressure that you are accountable to something higher than yourself. That's like the press. And then you have a fresh new garment. And you can do this again and again in your life. So besides the beautiful lesson, the point I want to make here is a perfect example. There are, how many laundromats or cleaners are there in Crown Heights? Many. Next time you walk by one, instead of just seeing a place where maybe you can bring your clothing, remember the Rebbe's letter, that's called taking the aleph of Elikus and the Lufa Shalel and putting it into Geulah. The same laundromat, but now it's become a lesson in life, a lesson to serve Hashem. That's what the world will look like when Moshiach comes. It's not going to be destroyed. I'm not talking about later stages where there's a whole different dimension. It's going to be the world as we see it. That's what the Rambam says. However, instead of people running for materialism as an end in itself, to make money or for power or influence, everything will be a stepping stone for a lesson to get closer to Hashem. Ladas es Hashem. That's what it means. So it's not like everybody is suddenly going to be sitting all day and learning. Not necessarily. People could be working, but their work will be permeated with Elikus. There'll be very differences. Not everyone's going to be the same level. But the prominent thing will not be the means, it will be the means to an end. You eat a meal, not just to get strong. You'll understand that this eating itself is a way of serving Hashem. This leads me to the second story I wanted to tell. I was once invited to a medical conference to speak. Now, I'm not a doctor, nor the son of a doctor, so what am I doing there? They wanted me to speak about the medicine of the future. What it will look like according to Chassidus, according to Torah and Chassidus in the future. Moshiach comes. So I shared with them, in brief, the following, that the whole idea of illness and infection, disease and death, is an aberration from the point of view of Torah. It means it's not a natural thing. The Pasuk says in Chumash that if Adam and Chava had not eaten from Eitz Hadas, no one would never die. Why? Because why should a neshama and a body ever have to separate? Think of a glass and water. If you put water in a glass, and barring the issue of evaporation, why should the water ever have to leave the glass? A neshama doesn't run out of energy. It's not like limited energy. A neshama is a part of Hashem. And so why is there a separation? Why should there be impediments that the body cannot live side by side with the neshama forever? The answer is, if you puncture the glass, so then the water will seep out. When Adam and Chava ate from the tree of knowledge, and the same thing with every sin, it creates a puncture in the material world that it no longer is completely aligned with the energy within it. And as a result of this disalignment, ultimately the soul and body cannot coexist. The body will deteriorate, and the body will wear down and erode and not be able to contain the soul. So the soul remains intact, but the body ages. And that's due to the chet, the sin, Adam and Chava. As we read in the beginning of Basi Legani, I'm sure you've learned it, the Friedrich Rebbe's Maimer and then the Rebbe's Maimerim, that when Adam and Chava ate from the Eitz Hadas, from the tree of knowledge, so the Shechina, which was there before, went up to the first heaven, to the sixth heaven, I should say. Why? Because it can no longer coexist with the material. Matter and spirit were no longer fully aligned. So it's the punctures that cause illness, infection, disease, and ultimately death. But that's an aberration. When Mashiach comes, and later stages of Mashiach, when we'll realign and we'll correct and remedy and heal those punctures and those wounds and those scars, like a mitzvah comes from the word connection, and avera comes from a disconnection. When that will happen, then the keli, the container, the cup, will be once again able to fully be aligned and contain the soul forever and ever. So that's when Mashiach comes, there will no longer be illness or infection or death and disease. I explained this elaborately in detail after I finished my presentation. One of the head doctors, the host, got up and thanked me and said, a beautiful explanation, but one question, we're all doctors here. What will happen with us at that time? There'll no longer be disease, no more infection, no more illness. So after the prerequisite joke, that maybe that's why doctors charge so much today in order to save for a long retirement, a very long retirement, I said the following. I said, on the contrary, instead of doctors having to deal with the pain and the suffering of disease, infection, illness, you'll be doing something much more beautiful. Because you have intimate knowledge of human anatomy and biology and chemistry and physiology and neurology and cardiology, etc., you'll teach us the secrets of the divine that the body carries. Mipsari echzelakah, from my flesh I behold God. We're all created in the divine image. Even the body itself is not a man-made entity. So those that have that intimate knowledge, those that have that profound knowledge of the details, will teach us the mysteries of the cosmos, the mysteries of God, the mysteries of God's creation, the mysteries of God's mind. Just as scientists will do so, astronomers will do so through astronomy, and physicists will do it through physics, and scientists of every order will do it through their science. That's putting the aleph of Alufa Shalem of God into the Geulah. So today, we can be focused on the science itself and the medicine itself. Then we'll be focused on understanding the divine. Mola Oretz Deus Hashem, knowing God through His creation, knowing God through the body. From our flesh we behold the divine. So this is now the mission that we all have. Now, where this is doctors, there's dry cleaners. Everyone has their domain, and each of you has yours. You know, when you're fulfilling your mission, you're here in school, you're studying, and the day will come very shortly, soon, you graduate, and then it will lead to the next stage in your life, finding the right soulmate, building a home and family, and fulfilling in your own way the Rebbe shlichus, and he in turn is the shliach of the Eibishter. So instead of focusing just on materialism and on material gains, or on a job, even a great job, always looking to find how to put the aleph, how to see the divine dimension in it. In addition to the actual career, in addition to the actual effort, in addition to the actual study, you look for what do we learn from this? What is the divine message? What is the divine lesson in life? And as such, each of us has that responsibility, because when Mashiach comes, that will be the whole world. Will exist, but it will exist without aleph. So nothing will change in the world. The world you see right now will continue to be. However, we'll add a dimension. As the Rebbe said, not to subtract anything, we'll add a dimension. And that dimension is the divine purpose, the higher purpose, the transcendent purpose. So how do you prepare for that? By doing that right now. Thinking of how your home, your room, your environment, your class, the way you walk in the street, are you thinking of the Aleph? Or are you just thinking of the immediate needs that you have? So every time we are conscious of it, every time we think about it, every time we act on it, we in turn are finishing those last pieces of the building blocks and the DNA that bring the Geulah. So, in simple terms, what the Rebbe called to us 27 years ago, and he said, do everything you can. We each have that call right now. The Rebbe said many times that when he speaks at a Farbrengen, even though there are many people there, each person should think as if he's speaking only to you. So the first step is each of you, each of us has to think, there's no one else. I can't look at anyone else. Can't say, you know what, who am I when no one else is doing it? I'm just a small person. No, the Rebbe was speaking to you. So the first thing is that have that commitment and that passion and that simas lev, that care, knowing it's my job. When you have that, you won't leave any stone unturned. And then you look for every possible way. What can I do to put the aleph of Elikus, of Alufa Shalelem, of Achdus, into my corner of the world, into what I do? At whatever stage in life you are. That is what we're called on. As I said before, no one's asking us to rebuild the Beis HaMikdash Shli. No one's asking us to do Tchis HaMesim or achieve other different type of things that are beyond our power. What is asked of us was in our ability to put the Aleph into our lives. And everyone in the things, the talents you have and the skills you have in the corner of the world that you have influence over. And I would add one more critical thing. Among the entire world, the Rebbe says specifically, the Noshim Tzidkonius and the Bonus Tzidkonius, the women and girls of our generation will bring the Geulah. B'schus Noshim Tzidkonius. Each one of you has something more powerful than the men of this world. To lead the way. To lead the way. So each of you have not just the responsibility, but it's the gift, the sensitivity, to lead the way for all of us toward the Geulah. So I hope my words have some impact, and most importantly, the biggest impact is when you see its perpul and imsheches, the perpetual impact, not today, but tomorrow, the next day, and the other days, that we actually go with this type of attitude. The Rebbe would always speak about dvarim betelim, that speaking, even beautiful things, but it doesn't come into action, it's wasted words. It's not like the first time I've ever done that, but it's in our control to take these words, which I hope was not my own words, but what I conveyed from the Rebbe's ideas, and actually inspire us and realize you are at the forefront. You are the new generation, the young generation. The whole world is ahead of you. Your whole future is ahead of you. To be the ambassadors, the shluchis, the leaders that put that aleph into your corner of the world, and not just for yourself, but explain it and influence and inspire others to do the same. And may, with this small effort that we do now, and not even delay any further, be zeicha, may we be zeicha, as the Rebbe concludes in the Maimer Basel Legani, Tavshin Yud Aleph. Niske zenzich min rem dola mata masarat tfachim v'hu yigalenu. Thank you very much.